Hello everyone, Xeno What If here. Bring in part 9 of the Transformers were in My Hero Academia. Link in the description of the fanfiction of this What If. Listen here YouTube. I do not own anything and this is not a scam. Chapter 17, From Enemies to Allies. Your leader, Optimus Prime, I think he said his name was. I think we might know where he is, and even better, we can take you right to him. If there was anything that Windblade was not expecting to hear, especially after all of the chaos that had just occurred, it would have been what Agent Fowler had just said to her. She was in such disbelief that she wasn't even sure if he heard him correctly. And it was evident from the faces that Kyoka, Mei and Momo were wearing, it was obvious that they were plenty shocked as well. The city speaker's optics trailed over to Bumblebee, seeing that he too was staring at Fowler in surprise, though he briefly glanced over to Izuku in concern. The Greenette was still sprawled on the ground, his legs and arms slowly healing as the woman known as Fairborn used her quirk on him. Silence had gripped the air for a good few moments after Fowler spoke those words, with Burns shifting uncomfortably next to him as everyone's gazes were trained on the two of them. Finally, however, Windblade furrowed her irises and strode forward, stopping in front of the two as she lowered to one knee, keeping her optics locked on Fowler. If this is some sort of trick, or a sick twisted joke. I assure you, it's not. Fowler said with utmost seriousness. I can guarantee with 99% certainty that we know where Prime is. He pointed directly over to Bumblebee. I recognized him the moment that the yellow guy's holographic message played. If you ask anyone in Sector to take a look at that big red and blue bot, then they'll tell you that he's been one of our longest residents at Tokuyama Dam. He's been kept in suspended animation in that pod of his for centuries, having been found frozen up in the Arctic over 200 years ago. Ever since then, he's been referred to as NBE-3 by our people. Sounds like he must have made it to Earth after all. Windblade concluded. But thanks to that ice, he was never able to make it out of his stasis pod, raised an irage in confusion. Also, NBE. What is that? Non-biological entities. Burns clarified. It's what we referred to your species as before we, found out about you from the Decepticons. Who again? I can't believe you fell for. Kyoka piped up from across the way with an irritated face. I mean, seriously, who hears that dangerous robots who call themselves Decepticons want to ally with them and say, oh, they sound trustworthy. The punk rocker had put on a mocking, dopey-sounding voice for good measure. Mei took her turn to speak as well. Yeah, and just an FYI, NBE is a far worse name than the one I came up with. And mine was literally, Transformers. And not far behind her, Bumblebee jumped in with his radio, the yellow bot giving the agents a stern glare. ZRKT, that's why, ZRKT, government agencies are, ZRKT, in the damn shape it's in, because of bullshit like this. Language, Momo reprimanded lightly, though I do find that point hard to argue. Alright, we get it. Burns admitted, raising his hands to try and put a stop to the bashing they were receiving. We made a huge mistake and it's something that we're probably not going to be living down. He nudged his head over to Fowler. But Agent Fowler's right, we do know where Optimus is. His eyes moved from the girls and up to Windblade hopefully. The question is, will you trust us to help you out? If there's one thing that we want to make sure we do, it's correct the mistake we've made. Fowler added, his own gaze going down to the gelatinous liquid that was once Dr. Powell. Powell was too short-sighted to admit that what we were doing was morally dubious, but if we can help in any way to make up for it, then we will. There was another short silence for a few seconds before, much to everyone's surprise, a certain young inheritor spoke up. Please, everyone's attention went to Izuku in surprise, seeing the young man struggling up onto his good elbow. Please, we need to take this chance. Izuku, Kyoka exclaimed. Don't move anything too much. She's right, Fairborn said, her hands moving from his legs and up to the boy's arm and shoulders, lightly moving him back down. I'm not done healing you yet, so please, just stay put. Izuku groaned, the feeling having returned to his legs as his arms slowly began to feel normal again as well. Although, he did feel a bit of pain in his joints as he tried to move them. Sorry. But they've got a point, Windblade. His sights went to Fowler again with an understanding nod. I know I would feel bad if I helped out a bunch of villains without knowing what would happen, so if they can lead us to Optimus, then I say we should help them. Windblade was taken aback by the bold words that Izuku was saying, the city speaker moving her attention from him and down to Fowler. She pursed her lips in thought before sighing, having come to her decision. She extended her index finger to Fowler. All right, Agent Fowler, we'll hear you out. But I swear, if this is a trick, things won't end well for your organization. Believe me, Miss Windblade, you have nothing to worry about on that front. Fowler said with a raised hand. After these events, I just want my plant to survive the next 24 hours. Slowly but surely, a smile came to Windblade's face. Now that is something I can agree on. Well, what are you waiting for? I'm sorry. Windblade wiggled her index finger around a little. Isn't it customary on your planet to seal the deal with a handshake? Fowler's eyes widened in realization. Oh, all right, of course. He reached out and grabbed the tip of Windblade's finger, shaking it while giving her a nod. Okay, so, before we take you to Prime, we'll need to come up with a plan on how to handle the cons. Agreed. Windblade nodded. But first we need to find out where they're actually going. Is there any sort of radio broadcast towers near here? Burns put a hand to his chin in thought. The only one I could possibly think of is the Tokyo Tower, but I doubt that they'd go there, especially in broad daylight. It's just too populated of an area. He crossed his arms as he went on. If they were going to do this, they'd probably wait until nightfall and pick an isolated tower that's out of sight from the general public. So we're looking for a lone comm tower in anywhere but Tokyo. Kyoka concluded. That certainly narrows it down. Actually, it does narrow it down a bit more than you think, young lady. Fowler explained as he pulled out his phone and searched up the nearest comm towers. I'll bet on Thomas Jefferson's quill that they'll be headed for a nearby tower, and considering where we are now, the map on his phone zoomed in down toward the Shizuoka prefecture, specifically down near the coast. Here, the closest isolated communication tower is located in a shipyard. Near Musudafu. Mei exclaimed. You've gotta be kidding. Izuku clenched his teeth and slowly stood up with Fairborn's help, a concerned and pained expression on his face as his joints still screamed at him in pain. We need to get down there, fast. If the Decepticons end up calling their reinforcements, he locked eyes with Kyoka, both of them very worried. Our hometown will be first on their list of key places to destroy. Burns went into action quickly, pulling out a phone from one of his many pockets. I'll get HQ on the horn ASAP. We'll need quick transport if we want to get back to base and get Prime out of there before the cons make their move. God, this is bad. Kyoka held her hands to her head, panic beginning to settle in. What if our families get caught up in all of that? We need to. Whoa, hold on. Windblade halted the earphone jack user promptly, kneeling down to put a hand to her back. Trust me, everything will be fine, Kyoka. We won't let them call more Decepticons to this planet. She craned her head around to Bumblebee, giving him a smile. Not if we can help it. Right, B. ZRKT, we're not gonna take it. No, we ain't gonna take it. Bumblebee played through his radio, pumping his fist into the air as he did. We're not gonna take it, anymore. Izuku and Kyoka smiled up to their friend in amusement, though they were still quite worried. Hee, thanks, B. Izuku trailed off before pulling out his phone. Still, I think I should definitely call All Might to tell him about what's going on. Maybe he can help us out with the cons. Agent Fowler nodded his head. Yeah, good idea, kid. Hold on. The man rounded about to Izuku, taking him by surprise. You mean to tell me that you have All Might's contact information? Izuku flinched as he just realized what he had done, with Agent Fowler moving up to him. Just how do you have that info, young man? Only a few select people are allowed to contact All Might directly, and last I checked, students aren't on the list. Well, HE and I are kind of the ones who discovered Bumblebee in the first place. Izuku reluctantly answered. Why, you see, HE's my mentor and, well, while we were training on the beach one day. Hold up, pause right there. Fowler held up a hand. You're saying that All Might is your mentor? The agent sent Izuku a scrutinizing face, looking for any hint of falsehood in the boy's expression. When he found none, however, his eyes widened slightly in realization before giving Izuku a nod. Well then, as surprised as I am by that, I definitely think you should get him on the horn and tell him all about this. We'll need his help. Izuku gulped and replied, why yes sir. By any chance, do you happen to know All Might? A chuckle escaped Fowler's lips at that. Hey, believe it or not, I do. I've worked with the big man multiple times in the past. An awkward expression came to his face as he glanced off to the side. Though I doubt he'll be too happy when he hears about what's been going on, he waved the thought off and shook his head. But we can deal with that later. Right now, we need to focus. Right. Windblade piped up, her optics focusing down onto the humans. Now, I believe the best course of action would be for B and I to tail the cons ourselves. You all can head back to your headquarters and do what you can to help bring Prime back online. She then set her sights directly onto the kids. And you should take the children with you. This, understandably, caused some unhappy reactions. What? All 4 UA students exclaimed before May added, but why can't we come with you? Windblade, I would hate to argue, but there is strength in numbers. Izuku countered. I don't think it would be all that wise for the 2 of you to take on these Decepticons by yourselves, especially since they have a clear advantage in size, strength and firepower. Yeah. Why not just wait until we get Optimus and then go kick some Decepticons? Kyoka suggested before pounding her fist into her palm. Hell, we'll even join ya. The city speaker shook her head as stepped over to Bumblebee. Out of the question. You saw what Dropkick did to that doctor, right? A long silence from all 4 teens followed, to which Windblade gave a nod. Exactly. As much as I would like for you all to join us, I'm afraid that you 4 would be too at risk to join in on this fight. It's why I'm sending you with Sector 7, so that we don't put you in harm's way. Momo crossed her arms and gave a curt nod. She's right, guys. This is way out of our league. Pro heroes may be able to handle the Decepticons, but when it comes to us, we're just students. She pointed over to Izuku. And the closest we've come to hurting them is when Midoriya broke his bones to do it. Definitely not a good strategy. Oh, come on, please. Kyoka implored before setting her gaze toward Bumblebee. Back us up here. However, Bumblebee wore a sullen expression, his optics trained directly onto his 4 human friends as another song began to play through his radio. ZRKT, I would hate for anything to happen to her. This took everyone by surprise, especially Kyoka who smiled from ear to ear. You're actually listening to the Smiths. Seeing that B still wore a look of worry on his face, Kyoka pursed her lips and sighed, giving a small nod. Yeah, I guess you have a point with all that, she admitted. Izuku stepped up next to Kyoka, putting a supportive hand on her shoulder as he gazed up to Windblade. We'll do as you ask, and we'll be sure to tell Optimus about everything that's going on when he wakes up. Good. Windblade smiled. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. And hopefully he should be able to get to us by the time the cons make their move. She craned her head around and nudged her head toward Bumblebee. Until then, B and I are going to go stake out that tower. With any luck, we won't run into the cons on the way there. At that moment, Agent Burns jumped in, holding his phone aloft. Alright, I just called in. HQ is sending a chopper with our names on it. He nudged his head to the teens. You 4 are coming with Fowler and myself. We'll make sure you get the right clearance to enter. If I may, Agent Burns. Fairborn jumped in, the woman still helping Izuku stand up. I would like to accompany you to make sure that this young man is feeling 100%. She sent a serious gaze down to the greenette. He may be fully healed, but still, I don't want to risk anything. Of course, Fairborn, you can tag along as well. Burns confirmed before setting his sights on the rest of Unit E. The rest of you, return to base as per the usual way. We'll see you all upon your return. The agent received a collective, yes sir. Before all of the troops returned to their vehicles and drove off, leaving the 7 humans and 2 Autobots behind as the sun began to set over the horizon. It was only then that the group noticed how much time had passed. Wow, is it that late already? Momo commented. Guess time flies when you're being attacked. Kyoka said, with a bit of a bite on the last word as she eyed Burns and Fowler. You're never gonna let us live this down, are you? Burns guessed. Kyoka shook her head. Probably not. You'd be surprised how long I hold grudges. After a small groan from both Burns and Fowler, the teens all stared up at Windblade and Bumblebee, the four of them still clearly concerned for their robotic friends. So, I guess this is where you have to leave. May guessed. Yes. Windblade nodded. But don't worry, we'll be alright. She gave the teens a wink. I mean, it's not like we haven't done anything like this before, you know. If we've survived thousands of years of war, I think we can handle two cons. Windblade glanced over to her yellow friend. Right, B. ZRKT, nothing's gonna stand in our way, not tonight. Bumblebee played through his radio, once again pumping a fist. This earned a chuckle from the teens before Izuku spoke once more. Hee, okay, why you guys have a good point. Just, be careful, okay. His and Bumblebee's gazes locked when he said that. The last thing I want to have happen is F for you guys too, why you know. Bumblebee lowered himself down and placed his metal hand onto Izuku's shoulder, giving it a soft, reassuring squeeze. ZRKT, 'cause every little thing gonna be alright. ZRKT, I promise. Izuku took in a deep breath and put on a confident smile. Right, good luck B. And kick plenty of skid plates for all of us. Kyoka added. Hee, we'll be sure to do that. Windblade affirmed as Bumblebee stood up, the two Autobots nodding to one another before transforming. WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHK. With Bumblebee now on all four tires and Windblade up in the air, the VTOL jet hovered around the humans while saying some departing words. Okay, if we're all clear on what we have to do, let's go save the planet. Now that sounds like something we can all agree on. May cheered. Let's do this. Unfortunately, what May said was easier said than done. I can't believe we had to wait half an hour for this stupid helicopter. The Pinkett said as she hung her head back on one of the seats, her body sprawled over it. Do you know how many babies I could have made in that time? The answer is many. Fowler, Burns and Fairborn stared at the young inventor with incredulous expressions after hearing that, only for Izuku and Kyoka to explain. She means her inventions, they both said in deadpan stereo before Kyoka pointed to Izuku with a smirk. Jinx, you owe me a soda. Gah, W walked right into that one. Izuku snapped his fingers, only to wince slightly. Ouch. Kyoka's eyebrows snapped up in concern. Izuku, you okay? Why yeah, just a bit sore is all. Oh, sorry. Fairborn piped up. That's a bit of a side effect of my healing quirk. You're definitely all better, but there will probably be some minor lingering joint pain. It doesn't last long, though. I'd give it another half hour at most. Huh, I see. Izuku said in intrigue. So that's why I've been aching so much. However, his eyes widened before realizing something. Oh, that reminds me, I never did thank you for healing me, Agent Fairborn. Fairborn smiled and gave him a wave. Oh, it's no problem at all. All part of the job. She took off her white helmet and let her brunette locks flow down, her blue eyes trailing across the teens before giving them a wink. And please, call me Marissa. And my name's Jacob. Burns added in, giving the kids a grin of his own. I only hope that we can start fresh on a better foot. And once again, I apologize for everything we've put you kids through today. Momo gave the agent a single nod. Apology accepted, Agent Burns. You were only doing what you were told to do, after all. She then quirked a brow at him. Just so long as you don't plan on any more attacks on us, then we'll be fine. Kyoka glanced over to her in surprise. Wow, Yaomomo, didn't know that you had a sarcastic side. The raven-haired beauty wore a sheepish grin at that. Well, I was somewhat serious with that last part. Trust me, young lady. Agent Fowler spoke up, drawing everyone's attention to him. With the situation we're in, the last thing we want is to attack any more innocents. And you forfeit that bill. Speaking of which, he set his eyes over to Izuku. How about that call to All Might? Oh, why yeah, that's right. Hold on, just a sec. Izuku took out his cell phone again and began dialing up the number 1 hero. As he was typing it in, though, Kyoka felt a small nudge at her side, turning to see both May and Momo smirking at her. What's up? Momo glanced away from Kyoka with a knowing smirk. Oh, You know, I just wanted to say that it was very sweet of you that you've been showing so much concern for Midoriya lately. A stunned expression came to Kyoka's face as Momo whispered that to her. Perhaps him saving your life in such a valiant way yesterday has made you more concerned for his well-being, too. Hey, you don't know the half of it. May jumped in. Jackie's been helping Muscles out with stuff pretty much since they first met. She's practically been helping to turn his whole dang life around, right? May said with a wink. A profuse blush came to Kyoka's cheeks at that. Well, I mean, yeah, she whispered back. That is what friends do, ya know. Perhaps, but I have to say, you two would make for a very cute couple. Momo said teasingly, making Kyoka flinch and her blush deepen. Finally starting to see the big picture. Face it, Kyoka, you like him a lot more than you care to let on to the rest of us. At Momo's teasing, however, Kyoka quickly regained her composure and forced a frown to her face, crossing her arms and turning her head away in a huff. That's absurd. And also none of your business, she whispered harshly. Also, care to say that any louder? I don't think Izuku heard you. May smiled at that. Okay then. She faced Izuku and increased the volume of her voice by quite the margin. Hey, Muscles. Jackie has something to tell, Everyone in the chopper was caught off guard when May was suddenly silenced by Kyoka's hand covering her mouth, the punk rocker wearing a nervous smile. Ah ha ha. Ha, and nothing to talk about here. Kyoka laughed awkwardly. Sorry about that, people. Izuku blinked a couple times, tilting his head to the side. Are you sure, Kyoka? If it's important, then. Nope, nothing important, the perplet assured. Just a little miscommunication. Trust me, Izuku, things are fine. Izuku stared at her for a few more moments before accepting her answer with a nod, giving a small shrug before going back to his phone. Once he did, though, that left Kyoka to glare daggers at May. May, you're my friend and all, but do you not understand sarcasm when you hear it? She whispered. Only half of the time, actually. May admitted. Mostly when I'm not paying attention. However, a rather amused smirk came to her face. But I did that one on purpose. Kyoka grumbled and once again turned away from the two in a huff, only to see Marissa looking straight at her with an amused smirk. A louder groan escaped Kyoka's throat and she facepalmed. Great, now the freaking doctor has an idea of what's going on. Momo reached over, setting her hand on Kyoka's back with a sympathetic grin. Kyoka, in all seriousness, I would be happy to help you out with this. The rich girl's whispered words took Kyoka by surprise, but all the same, she kept her expression one of skepticism. What are you talking about? What I'm talking about is an offer to help you with him. Momo nudged her head over to Izuku, the greenette holding his cell phone up to his ear as it rang. After all, like I said, it's obvious that you have feelings for him, and I think you two would be quite cute together. Kyoka kept her brow furrowed to Momo for a few moments before her face relaxed, her eyes shifting down to look at her legs. We've only known each other for like, a month at most, she murmured. I don't know if, can feelings like this emerge that fast? Momo asked. Indeed they can. Kyoka, if there's one thing that I've learned, it's that everyone falls in love at their own pace. Could we maybe not use the L word this freaking soon? Kyoka implored. This is tense enough as is talking only like, a few feet away from him, I don't need him hearing that word. Momo nodded at that. Understandable. But the fact remains that feelings for others can develop over any period of time. She sent another wink to Kyoka. And to be honest, a month is a perfectly normal amount of time. Don't worry, I'll help you out. Momo extended her hand to the perplet. That is, if you let me. Kyoka stared at the raven-haired girl for a few seconds more before her smile finally returned, reciprocating the handshake soon after. Hey, deal, just try not to thrust me into something I'm not ready for, okay? Of course. Momo agreed. If you wish to take this at your own pace, then I will not argue with you. Across the way, Izuku couldn't help but grumble to himself a bit. He had just tried to call All Might about 3 times already, and not one call he made had been answered. He didn't know if All Might was still in a meeting, if he didn't have his phone on him, or what, but what he did know was that this was starting to get a bit frustrating. He glanced over to Fowler and asked, "Are you sure this copter doesn't jam cell signals?" 100% positive, Fowler replied, raising his right hand. Trust me, I've made plenty of calls from this chopper before. Well, I just hope third time's the young Midoriya. At that moment, Izuku heard the voice of the number one hero speak into his ear, making him jump a bit. Is that you? Gah, All Might. Izuku fumbled with his phone as his grip slightly loosened on it, almost dropping it in the process. He caught it and breathed a sigh of relief before bringing it back to his ear. Sorry, didn't think you'd pick up this time either. On the other end, Izuku could hear Toshinori sigh as well. Hey, don't worry about it, young man. Honestly, I should be the one apologizing. I couldn't get to your call right away because this damn faculty meeting is still going on. There was a brief pause as the pro-hero murmured something under his breath before going back to Izuku. But I managed to get myself excused for a while. So, what's going on and what's that I hear in the background? Is that a helicopter? Izuku swallowed nervously. Why yeah, about that, the reason I called is because we ran into a bit of trouble. There was a long silence on the other end of the line before Toshinori hesitantly responded. What kind of trouble? Well, you might want to sit down for this one. Over the course of the next 10 minutes, Izuku explained what had went down to the number one hero, the whole inside the chopper looking at him intently as he did. Once he had gotten done explaining the Autobots' plan to intercept the Decepticons and how they were going to retrieve Optimus Prime, Izuku let out a breath. And that's basically it. And again, there was a pause, which left Izuku feeling rather uncomfortable. Why you're mad, aren't you? Oh, no, young Midoriya. Toshinori denied, though he did sound a bit agitated. I'm not mad at all. Well, not at you in any case. The hero sighed once more before uttering. I should have guessed that a government agency like Sector 7 would probably be on this sooner or later. I just didn't expect that this would be how they. Wait, hold on, All Might. Izuku interrupted. Why you're saying you know what Sector 7 is? I mean, I knew you knew Agent Fowler, but I didn't know. Well, of course, Toshinori replied. It's a hero's job to know about multiple different government agencies, young Midoriya. And I've worked with Sector 7 on a few occasions. That said, while I knew they dealt within the study of extraterrestrial life, I had no idea that they were this far deep into it. There was another brief pause before Toshinori went on. You know what? Young Midoriya, you said that Agent Fowler was there with you, right? Izuku glanced up to the agent and locked eyes with him, with Fowler growing somewhat nervous as they did. Why yeah, he is. At that, Fowler began rapidly shaking his head, as if to say, no, don't do this to me. Izuku eyed his phone again curiously. Why? Put him on, I've got something to say. A slightly fearful expression came to Izuku's face at how Toshinori said that. He could practically hear the agitation lacing the seemingly casual tone, and he knew that meant nothing good could come from it. Still, he knew it best not to question his mentor in a time like this. Sure. He handed the cell over to Fowler, who was still shaking his head quickly. The agent attempted to push the phone back to Izuku, but the greenette simply shook his head as well and pushed back, thrusting the phone into Fowler's hands. Damn it, Fowler mumbled to himself before taking a deep breath, bracing himself as he brought the phone to his ear. Hello. Bill. All Might. Haha, long time, no talk. Are you and your people out of your damn minds? Everyone jumped in their seats at how loud that bellow was, and it was obvious to Izuku, Kyoka and Bill himself that All Might had buffed up right then and there. Fowler let out a breath and said, I had a feeling that's how you'd react. You're damn right it is. All Might continued. Just in what world do government agents ally with the obviously evil robots and try to attack not only the obviously good robots but also innocent teenagers? Listen, All Might, I know how messed up this is, but if you wanna yell at someone, don't look at me. Fowler defended himself. We both know that Wayland's the one who makes the decisions, and honestly, I could not have disagreed more. But unfortunately, he was more willing to listen to Pal on this one. All Might sighed through his nostrils at that. Yes, and it would seem the doctor was met with an unfortunate fate. For that, I deeply apologize. Still, you could have at least waited for the kids to explain everything. Fowler's shoulders slumped slightly. That I won't argue with you. But right now, what's done is done, and what we need to focus on now is stopping these Decepticons from calling their reinforcements. And that, I can agree with you on. All Might concurred. Unfortunately, I'm still stuck at this faculty meeting and I'll need to get back soon. I'll see if I can leave early and I'll head to the shipyard as soon as I possibly can. Until then, get Optimus Prime back online. If anyone can help you right now, it would definitely be him. Exactly what I'm thinking. Hope to see us soon, old pal. Fowler's eyes moved over to the teens, a slight wince on his face. And again, sorry we put your charges through all of this. Well, I suppose it isn't entirely your fault, so apology accepted. All Might returned. But I hope I never have to hear about this kind of thing again, understand? Now, would you please hand the phone back to young Midoriya? Fowler smiled in relief. Hey, thanks. And sure, will do. Once the phone was back with Izuku, he held it up to his ear and asked, yes, All Might. Young Midoriya, I would just like to say that I am very proud of you right now. All Might replied, taking his protege by complete surprise. Not only are you facing this situation bravely, but you also managed to save Bumblebee in his time of need. Yes, you may have broken your bones again, but it takes great courage to do what you've done, no question. You, young man, are already shaping up to be quite the hero if both today and yesterday are anything to be concerned. Izuku could feel his lower lip quiver and his eyes begin to well up with tears at such praise. He forced himself not to cry and choke back a sob as he responded, thanks, All Might. My pleasure. Now, I suggest you all remain focused on your mission. I will try to be there as soon as possible, alright? Alright, of course. Izuku affirmed. Well, see you later, All Might. After exchanging goodbyes and shutting the phone off, Izuku regained his composure, forcing his tears back down as a smile came to his lips, with Kyoka, Mei and Momo all returning it as well. It was at that moment that the helicopter pilot announced that they had made it to the base, leading Izuku to smile even wider. The group peered out their windows to see Tokuyama Dam growing ever closer, their hopes rising as it did. Alright, let's go get Optimus. A while later, down further south, Windblade and Bumblebee had finally made it back to Musutafu, the duo making a beeline for the coast the moment they entered the city. They knew that Shatter and Dropkick had gotten a head start on them, so it was expected they already had to be there. Sure, it had taken them longer to get there than Windblade had wanted since the jet had to keep pace with the slower bug to prevent separation, but given that the sunset had given way to nightfall, it was probably for the best. After all, better to have no humans out and about while this was all happening. Still, that didn't do much to curb Windblade's anxieties. At least it'd take a good while for them to actually set the transmitter up to get a signal to Cybertron, she thought to herself in reassurance. What was important, however, was how they were going to approach this. They knew that they were outgunned, the Decepticons always had the superior firepower. Plus, the fact that both Shatter and Dropkick had aerial vehicle modes would also be a clear advantage, as that would leave only Bumblebee grounded. The best thing they had to rely on was their combined strengths and their wit, which wasn't exactly all that reassuring. So, think we can pull this off? Windblade asked over her comm as she flew overhead. ZRKT, and here I thought. ZRKT, you were, ZRKT, the confident one. Bumblebee remarked. Well, it's not like this is going to be an easy mission to pull off. Windblade countered. Sure, it's still 2-on-2, but the kids had a point. We're dealing with two cons that not only have greater strength and firepower, but also more mobility than either of us. Makes me wish we had some reinforcements. There was a brief pause before Bumblebee piped up again. ZRKT, don't worry, ZRKT, everything's gonna be okay, ZRKT, All Might and ZRKT, Prime, will come to help us. Windblade sighed at that. Well, I certainly hope so. The two fell silent again as Windblade began to see the docks approaching over the city skyline, the shipyard also coming into view as the sun continued to set behind them. There it is. You ready for this? ZRKT, as ready as I'll ever be. Bumblebee replied. Alright, let's do this. The city speaker lowered herself down closer to the ground as Bumblebee pulled up toward the empty shipyard, seeing that there were absolutely no humans in sight. Everyone must have gone home for the evening already. The duo transformed and immediately hid themselves inside of a small alleyway between two buildings, keeping their optics sharp and steady as they scanned the area. After a short few seconds, Bumblebee piped up again. "ZRKT, look over there." Windblade followed where Bumblebee was pointing and saw a large tower, one with a rather sizable antenna on it. That must be the comm tower that Fowler mentioned. She went back to scanning the area, only to find any signs of shatter or dropkick anywhere. But, I don't see the cons. Her irises furrowed a bit as she contemplated. I hope Fowler was right about this and it isn't a different tower, otherwise, we. But then, the sound of an approaching chopper from behind them cut Windblade off, the city speaker gasping as she and B snapped their heads around. Sure enough, they saw Dropkick in his helicopter mode coming in from overhead, and he was coming in hot toward them. He came just above the alleyway before transforming into his armored car mode and fell the rest of the way down into the alley, his double-barreled cannon transforming out of the top of his vehicle mode before firing directly at the Autobot duo. "Scatter!" Windblade shouted, with her and B lunging from the alleyway not 2 seconds later. The blast connected with the ground where they once stood, sending debris and dust flying into the air. The Autobots landed on their fronts, the duo starting to get up just as Dropkick rolled through the cloud of dust. WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHK. Dropkick transformed into his robot mode, holding his hand cannon and taking aim at Bumblebee. He, oh, I was hoppin', that you'd be stupid enough to follow us. He stepped hard onto Bumblebee's back, forcing the yellow bot to the ground as his optics narrowed in contempt. Autobot scum, valiant and heroic to the very end. Can't believe that you'd actually want to save this backwater world and these squishy fleshlings. Shut it, Windblade shouted as her wings extended, ready to blast him with a gust of wind energy. However, before she could, WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHK. Clang. Gah. Windblade was sent sprawling back to the ground as she felt a hard kick connect with her back, the foot stomping down on her for good measure as a familiar evil snicker came from over her. HM, oh Windblade, you truly are foolish. Shatter sneered. To think you and the bug could actually stop us, such heroic nonsense. Windblade continued to struggle, only for Shatter to grind her heel further into her back. HM, as much as I would like to deal with you personally, though, I have more important matters to attend to. The red Decepticon set her optics onto her partner, giving him a nod. I leave them to you. I trust you can properly dispose of them while I send out the signal. Hey, you kiddin'. Dropkick reached behind him and pulled his propellers off his back, the two blades coming together to form a rather intimidating sword. It'd be my pleasure. Excellent, and just to make things interesting, Shatter reached down and took Windblade's sword handle from her hip, the city speaker shouting in protest. I seem to recall throwing away this little trinket, let's do it again. With all her strength, Shatter threw the sword away and shouted, fetch. The handle of the energy blade was sent hurtling toward the bay, splashing down into the deep water below. No. Windblade screamed before being punched in the back of the head by Shatter, sending her face down directly into the pavement below. Shatter stepped off Windblade nonchalantly before kicking her away for good measure. There, that should even things up a bit. WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHK. The Femme transformed into her aircraft mode and flew up into the air, headed straight for the communication tower. They're all yours, Dropkick. Finish them. An evil laugh escaped the blue mech's throat. Ha ha. Gladly. He charged up his hand cannon again and aimed it directly at Bumblebee's head. Sorry, B-127, but I think it's time for you to join many of your other Autobot allies. And don't worry, I'll make sure those human friends of yours are dealt with, too. Unfortunately for Dropkick, those words inadvertently set off a switch in Bumblebee's head, his optics flashing from blue to red in an instant. With a surge of strength flowing through him, Bumblebee activated his stingers and set them to full power, rotating his arms so that he could stab both of them into Dropkick's leg. Gah! The blue mech hollered in pain and was forced to pull his leg off B's back, allowing the smaller bot to roll over and perform a handspringing, thrusting his feet directly into Dropkick's midsection. The Decepticon was sent staggering back and landed on a bunch of storage units, giving Bumblebee time to rush over and help Windblade up. Thanks, B. The city speaker steadily stood as her optics went directly toward the bay, where her sword was surely laying on the ocean floor. Scrap, I need to get my blade back, but… ZRKT, it's okay. Bumblebee said, placing a reassuring hand on Windblade's shoulder. ZRKT, I can handle, I am, ZRKT, you just go, ZRKT, get your baby back. Windblade glanced between her friend and Dropkick as he began to get up, the femme hesitant to leave. However, staring into B's optics, which had returned to their normal blue, she saw that B was confident that he could do this, leading to her giving him a small smile. Okay, but if things get hairy, contact me, okay? Bumblebee gave her a nod, ushering her to get moving. At his behest, Windblade transformed and blasted off toward the bay, though Dropkick saw her do this as he stood back up. Oh no you don't. Dropkick went to transform, only to be met with another intense electric shock. Gaaaah. Ow. You don't know when to give up, do ya, bug? Dropkick rounded on Bumblebee and glared daggers at him, the yellow mech standing firm as their optics met. Dropkick cocked his weapon as it began charging up. You have any idea just how out of your league you are? Bumblebee responded by simply flipping down his visor and battle mask, his stingers at the ready as he thought to himself, Izuku, I hope you guys are making progress with Optimus. Little did the yellow mech know, however, that while he and Windblade were dealing with the Decepticons, Izuku, Kyoka, Mei and Momo were all being led through Sector 7's base of operations, with Fowler, Burns and Fairborn in front of them while a certain ram-horned general lead the way. They were currently in a large, industrial elevator that was leading down to the deepest parts of the base beneath the dam, and the teens all couldn't help but feel a bit put off at the perturbed expression on General Wayland's face. You all are aware of how much of a breach in protocol this is, right? The man asked, glancing out the corner of his eye at the teens who flinched slightly. If the fate of the entire damn planet wasn't at stake. Abe, I don't use this language with you often, Fowler piped up, but kindly shut it. Remember, you're the one who approved Powell's decision in the first place. As far as our superiors at the White House will probably be concerned, this'll all be on your head if this all goes belly up. MPH. Wayland grumbled, returning to face the front again. Bill, I won't argue with you on that. I was short-sighted, to be sure. I had the best interest for the world in mind and I fucked it all up. I only hope you're right about this, waking NBE-3 up. Because if this doesn't work, we might all be in some deep shit. Ahem, General. Izuku piped up, causing Wayland to peer over his shoulder to the nervous boy again. IIC can assure you, this is probably the best possible solution to all of this. If anyone can stop the Decepticons, it's the Autobots, and it's important that we get their L leader, Optimus Prime, back online. Kyoka folded her arms over her chest. Izuku's right. As much as I really wanna dig into you for your crap decisions, I know the best way you can make up for it is by letting us get Prime out of here and back to Musutafu. The general pursed his lips before craning his head back around. I certainly hope so, kids. With that, the elevator came to a stop and its massive doors opened, revealing a rather large hangar filled to the brim with all sorts of storage units and other such things. All right, tread lightly here, the general said as he ushered the group into the hangar. I can personally guarantee you that everything in here is definitely not safe. Follow me to the pod containment room, we've already got the place thawing out. General, that room has been in sub-zero temperatures for the past 200 years. Fairborn pointed out. Just how are we going to thaw that pod faster? That's where I come in. Burns jumped in, removing his gloves all the while. Just let me in there and I'll pull the big bot out of his deep freeze. All of a sudden, his hands changed from skin and bones to a more magma-like substance, the hot material glowing and steaming. Izuku was quick to light up at the sight of Burns' quirk. Whoa, your hands can turn into magma. Yep. Jacob gave the excited boy a smile and waved his hand in front of his face. I call my quirk, heat hands. And trust me, they freaking work. He sent Izuku a thumbs up. With these, Optimus will be out in no time. Momo gave a relieved sigh. Well, That's good to know. However, she trailed off as the group continued down the corridor, only to see something rather surprising enter her peripheral vision. Across the way, there was a rather large room with a rather huge metal structure inside of it, piquing her curiosity. "Say, what's that over there?" The other teens stopped to see what she was looking at, their eyes widening in amazement. The structure itself was a large, metal ring that was about 30 feet high, and seemed to be an entrance to a tunnel with even more rings inside of it, only to end abruptly about 40 feet in. It was situated on a massive platform with a control console toward the right of the massive ring, though what was most intriguing was that the console looked to be made for much larger beings. But if there was one thing that everyone was certain about, it was that May was smitten the moment her eyes zoomed in on it. "Ah!" she gasped before making a break for the massive device. "Eeeeeeeeee. Oh my gosh, I have to see that baby, oof." Before she could get far, though, Agent Fowler stopped her in her tracks, sending a serious gaze down to her. "No way, young lady, not happenin'. You heard what the general said, everything in here is extremely dangerous, especially that thing." "Agent Fowler is right," Waylon interjected. "Whatever you do, do not go near that thing. That is probably the most dangerous item we have in this base." He craned his head over to Momo and gave her a nod. "But, if I were to answer your question on what it is, we suspect it to be some sort of alien teleportation device." "Teleportation?" all of the teens said at once in shock. Waylon placed his hands behind his back as he proceeded on his way toward the containment room again, explaining as the group continued along. "Yes, teleportation. You see, that thing, or, the gateway, as we call it, was found a long time ago underneath an ancient temple in Greece, about a century or so back. We have no idea how long it was there for, but our people at the time disassembled it and put it back together here as best they could. They tried to figure it out, but, well, let's just say that it didn't go well for the guy who tested it." There was a short silence before Kyoka decided to ask. "So, what happened, exactly?" "Trust me, you don't want the grim details," Fairborn assured. "Let's just say that, from what I heard, cleanup was not pleasant that day." A shudder went through the group as they finally made it to the containment room, prompting Waylon to face them. "All right, listen up, it's probably best if all of you stay out here while Burns goes in to unthaw the pod. Even while it's thawing, it's still below zero, and you all won't survive long in those conditions without a protective suit." The general faced Burns and gave him a nod. "That said, Burns, you're up." "Yes sir." Burns saluted before stepping up to a storage case next to the door, labeled, Sub-Zero Protection Suit. Burns undid a lot of his gear before slipping into the suit itself, slipping on a helmet that sealed itself onto the heavy white garment. The only part of him that was left exposed was his hands, which were still burning hot with magma. "All right, let's do this." "Gee, good luck, Agent Burns," Izuku offered, to which the agent sent him another thumbs up. After ushering the other to take several steps back, Burns opened the heavy metal door, its lock clacking and clattering together as it was pushed open for the first time in years. The moment Burns entered the room, it was like he had stepped onto another world entirely, one made of thick ice and nothing else. "Man, guess this is what it feels like to be on Hoth," he thought to himself before finding the object he was seeking. In the middle of the room was a rather large, silver pod, one that was surrounded by a network of scaffolding that the scientists and researchers used for studying the thing. Burns trekked up the metal stairs, careful not to slip on the ice that had formed on it before making it to the top. There, he had a good vantage point to peer down into the clear glass window on the pod's front, which also served as the seal that kept the massive being inside of it. The glass was mostly frozen over, but Burns could still make out several details of the robot inside, and from little he could make out, it definitely appeared to be the same bot. "All right, big guy." Jacob's hands grew hotter and hotter to the point where flames were dancing around his fingertips. "Let's get you out." Gah! With a forceful cry, Burns thrust his hands out and sent a stream of intense fire out over the pod, the sudden heat making the ice melt almost immediately and creating steam in the process. After a few minutes more, he saw that the ice had nearly melted away completely, making him give out a laugh. "Haha, yes, now we've got ya." However, at that moment, a control board on the stasis pod itself began to unfreeze as well. And the moment that Burns' fire hit it, the began to short circuit and spark as the internal wiring began to melt and spark. All of a sudden, the control board lit up with red text on a screen that began flashing, along with a small yet sharp alarm that was unable to go unnoticed by Jacob. Warning, warning, stasis pod overheating, explosion imminent, administering emergency awakening protocol. Not 2 seconds after the computer said that, a blue flash was seen through the window of the pod and Jacob could hear groans and grunts of exertion inside. His eyes widened as the pod began to sputter out more sparks, a billow of smoke pluming out of the control console as the being inside of the pod began to force its way out, the window being punched off by a large red arm with a blue hand. Explosion imminent, explosion imminent. Oh, that's probably my cue to stop. Burns did just that and his hands went back to normal, quickly jumping down from the scaffolding before he could even catch a glimpse at the blue-eyed giant that began emerging from the pod. He made a break for the door and jumped through it, his eyes immediately darting toward the group of teens and agents before shouting at them. "Get down, now!" The teens were all confused by his command, but fortunately, Fairborn, Fowler and Whalen were quick to get them all on the ground. And then, ka-boom! The resulting explosion form inside the containment room not only served to rock the very foundation beneath everyone's feet, but also blow off not just the heavy steel door, but a large portion of the entire wall. A mix of hot and cold air as well as smoke and mist came billowing out of the room where the stasis pod now lay in a heap of scrap, its occupant having fled just in time as sprinklers rushed to put out the fire. The moment everyone was sure things had settled, they all stood up, with May setting her sights to Burns. "Okay, what the heck just happened? We almost got blown the fuck up is what happened." Kyoka snapped, sending a small glare to the agent. "The hell did you do in there?" Burns sighed as he took off the protective suit, shaking his head all the while. "Well, apparently there was a computer console on that thing and my flames were a bit too hot for it to handle." He rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. I guess I was in a bit of a rush with this one." Fairborn raised a brow at him. "Nice Jacob, very nice," she said sarcastically. But what about Optimus?" Izuku exclaimed in panic. Did he get out?" Crunch. All of a sudden, the sound of metal and cement being crushed beneath something large graced everyone's ears, almost as if a set of tires were rolling across a rather rough surface. And it was only then that the group noticed another certain sound, one that sounded distinctly like a large truck engine. Everyone slowly turned their heads toward the cloud of smoke, seeing 4 sets of bright headlights come shining through it, and they were coming closer. "I think, we're about to find out," Momo whispered. Sure enough, from out of the smoke came a big alien vehicle that resembled a semi-tractor truck, its smokestacks billowing steam as it rolled out of the thick cloud. It had a flat nose and its windscreens were a bright blue, which contrasted against its primarily red cab. It had a horizontal white stripe going across its front end, oddly enough, 4 sets of Gatling guns on either side of its front bumper, with 2 on each side. There were also, of course, 4 sets of headlights on it. 2 that were in the usual headlight position while the other pair were situated right over its windscreens. Its trailer hitch was a deep blue color, and its rear wheel wells covered up most of its rear tires. Most prominently of all, though, they saw the Autobot symbol on its left side, reassuring them immensely. The group remained silent as the alien vehicle pulled up to them, a hissing sound being heard as it came to a halt. And then, WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHK. The truck began to transform, starting with the sides of its cab folding out into a pair of large arms. The Gatling gun emplacements rotated on the cuff of its hands as its shoulders came out as well, the smokestacks attached to them. A pair of blue hands popped out of the arms and slammed down onto the ground, pushing itself up as its front began to compress in on itself. The bumper folded in, allowing the pelvic area to be revealed as the grille formed into the abdomen and the windscreens became the pectoral region, the front tires compressing into the sides of the body. The entire top of the truck folded up and over onto the back of the cab as the trailer hitch separated and unfolded into a pair of large legs, its feet forming from the rear bumper. Once the robot was on its own 2 legs, its chest opened up and allowed its blue head to rotate out, revealing the unmistakable, face-plated visage of the bot the group was hoping to see. "My God, Fowler murmured as the robot finished its transformation, its optics lighting up a brilliant blue. It was then that the Autobot began scanning his surroundings, his optics silently moving about the area. Did he even notice us? Fairborn asked, only for the Autobot to snap its head back down to them, causing the human to jump and Marissa to step back a bit. Hee, sorry I asked. The Autobot furrowed his brow slightly before taking a mighty step forward, kneeling down so that his face was closer to their level. He rested a hand on his knee as he inspected the faces of the organic creatures before him, seeing that they appeared to be quite intimidated. Deciding to put those fears away, he finally spoke up, his soothing yet somewhat grizzled voice putting them at ease. Greetings, small organic beings. My name is Optimus Prime. He introduced himself kindly. I am an autonomous robotic organism from the planet Cybertron. Now, if I may ask, where exactly am I? Chapter 18, Optimus, Windblade soared straight over the bay before diving down into the ocean below, her VTOL fans propelling her forward as she dove deeper and deeper into the darkened depths. The Femme transformed into her robot mode as she came to the ocean floor, pulling her wings into her back as she activated a pair of high beams from her optics. Okay, Stormfall, where are you? She proceeded forward, her metal body pushing itself against the underwater currents. Unfortunately, this also had the added effect of her kicking up sand with every step, blocking her vision as a result. Fantastic. She stopped in her place and began scanning around, hoping to promise that her sword hadn't drifted too far away from where Shatter threw it. However, unbeknownst to her, there was something lurking in the water with her, and she was facing away from it as it approached her. Only when she felt it ram into her back did she react, and it was certainly very appropriate. Gah! Windblade spun around, and was confused by what she was seeing. An organic Sharkticon. As it happened, it was actually a shortfin mako shark, its beady black eyes staring straight at her as it bared its teeth. In said jaws, however, Windblade caught sight of a certain object, and she let out a gasp. It was her sword. Hey, let go of that. Windblade reached out, only for the shark to dart away rapidly, making her irises furrow. I don't have time for this. She extended her wings again and used her VTOL fans to propel herself after the shark, catching up to it in no time. I said let go. She reached her hand out and quickly tugged the sword handle away, the shark lurching from her as she did so. Then, it darted back around to attack her, only to see she had activated Stormfall in half a second. The purple energy blade illuminated her features, making her glare all the more intimidating. You don't want to take this chance. Evidently, the shark agreed because it shot back around and swam away much faster than it had the first time. With a satisfied smirk on her face, Windblade nodded and transformed into her vehicle mode, pointing herself straight up to the water's surface. Okay, Shatter, now it's your turn. Meanwhile, back in the shipyard, said Decepticon Femme was currently setting up the communication tower to broadcast her message back to Cybertron. She had made sure to prepare herself for just such an occasion, too, having pulled out a portable Cybertronian power supply from her storage. The device glowed bright green as she placed it onto the comm tower, causing a massive surge to go up into the antenna at the top. She set up a control unit near the top and set Earth's satellites up so that they were all pointing in Cybertron's direction and, in a few moments, she had entered her message. Autobots found. Arc destination discovered. Send army to Earth. After attaching the planet's coordinates to the message, she sighed to herself in satisfaction. I've waited many millennia for this day. She strolled over to the edge as she watched the loading meter move up, awaiting the message to be transmitted. And to think that it would come on such a backwater planet like this. She scoffed and placed her hands behind her back. This dust ball's inhabitants will get what's coming to them. Boom. Shatter's optics widened and her gaze moved down to the shipyard below, seeing that there was still plenty of action going on. As it happened, Dropkick had come careening down onto Bumblebee in his helicopter mode, crashing into the yellow mech and taking them through multiple boats. As expected, many of them exploded. Shatter pursed her lips in annoyance. MPH, just finish him already, Dropkick. Down in the yard, Dropkick stood up and punched Bumblebee square in the jaw, pulling out his hand cannon soon after. He went to shoot Bumblebee in the face at point-blank range, but the yellow bot quickly grabbed the weapon and wrenched it away, causing it to blast yet another ship. B then went low and hit dropkick in the knee, making the Decepticon grunt in pain before B suddenly did a flip kick on him in the face, making dropkick stagger back. The blue bot glowered at the bug and balled his fists. "Oh, you are going to pay for that." The moment B charged at dropkick, he charged back, the two grappling with one another for dominance. However, dropkick's size easily allowed him to overpower the bot and he sent B flying away, only for Bumblebee to immediately transform before he hit the ground. The Volkswagen Beetle then rounded about and, with as much speed as he could muster, Bumblebee came back at dropkick and transformed, jumping at him and hitting him in the face as hard as he could. Back up on top of the tower, Shatter grumbled to herself. Why must all Autobots be so persistent, gah? Without warning, a missile suddenly rushed past Shatter's head, the femme just barely avoiding it after seeing it coming from the corner of her eye. She set her gaze out over the ocean where it came from, and she saw Windblade flying at her at top speed. "Shatter!" Windblade hollered. The con sneered and shook her head. "This only proves my point." With that, Shatter jumped off the tower and blasted off toward Windblade, shouting out to her. "If that's how you want to play it, then so be it." She activated a pair of guns on her flanks and began firing back at Windblade, who bobbed and weaved around the incoming fire expertly. The city speaker darted upward to attempt to put some distance between them and get to the tower, but Shatter quickly caught on to her plan, moving around and following Windblade as fast as she could. Nice try. At that moment, a large gun emplacement transformed out from under Shatter's cockpit and fired a large missile at Windblade, catching the city speaker on her tail. Forced to transform, Windblade cried out as she fell out of midair, though she still kept her wings extended. "Well, take this then." From her turbines, a blast of air energy was sent out toward Shatter, catching the Decepticon just one of her own VTOL fans. And, just like that, both of them were falling down toward the hard ground below. The duo landed quite roughly, though Windblade used her turbines again to soften her own landing, which Shatter was not fortunate enough to do. Getting up to her feet, Windblade pulled her Stormfall sword out and activated it, narrowing her optics at the Decepticon. Now, where were we? Izuku Midoriya wasn't sure exactly what to say at that moment. His whole body had just stopped, his jaw hanging open at the sight before him. He had never been this stunned in his life. Well, okay, there was one other time. The first time he had ever seen All Might's debut footage, where he had rescued over 1,000 people from a great disaster. How Optimus was able to leave that type of impact on him by simply speaking, Izuku had no idea. But it was then that the Quirk inheritor began to see many more similarities between the Autobot leader and the symbol of peace. They both had a certain dynamism to their appearance that was undeniable, and the similar color scheme between Prime's paint job and All Might's suits didn't go unnoticed either. Still, Izuku could tell that they had their differences as well. All Might exuded a dramatic flair while Optimus seemed much more reserved, evident in his tone of voice. A voice which spoke up again after about a minute of silence. "Are you all right?" Optimus asked in concern. "You have all been staring at me for about a cycle now." It was then that everyone snapped out of their stupor, with Agent Fowler clearing his throat. "Ahem, why yes, we're fine." He straightened out his tie and stepped forward, locking his eyes with Prime's optics. It's just, well, we were just at a loss for words." He extended a hand up to Optimus and gave him a nod. "My name is William Fowler, Special Agent for the United States Government. Welcome to Earth, Mr. Prime." "Earth," Optimus muttered to himself before extending his index finger, shaking Fowler's hand. "So, that is the name of this planet. And that would make you humans," Marissa finished. "Though I suppose you could call us Earthlings as well, but hey, semantics." Optimus nodded in understanding. "I see. Well, thank you for welcoming me to your planet. And I am thankful to you for freeing me from my stasis pod." His optics shifted around to the rest of the facility. "That said, where are we, exactly?" General Wayland stepped forward, extending his own hand. "Well, Optimus Prime, sir, you are inside of a Sector 7 facility, a secret branch of the government based in Ibegawa, Japan. We've actually been keeping your pod here for quite some time. I'm General Wayland, I head the place." Optimus shook his hand as well. I see, a pleasure to meet you, General. But then, he took notice of the horns on Waylon's head. Ahem, please don't take this the wrong way, but... You noticed the horns, right? Waylon chortled. Yes, I'm fully aware of them. They're pretty much part of my quirk. The Prime raised an eyelash at the word. Your quirk. Yes, exactly. Agent Burns spoke up, shifting his hands from their normal state and back into their heated form. You see, about 80% of the human population has special powers or abilities that we call quirks. They can come in pretty much any form, and as a result, we live in a superhuman society. As he went on, Optimus' expression grew ever more intrigued. Unfortunately, while there are people who use their quirks for good on a day-to-day basis, there are also criminals who take advantage of their quirks to perform evil deeds. We call those people villains. Fowler jumped in, and as such, we have heroes who take care of these types of criminals as a profession. Optimus put a finger to his chin as he took this information in. Very fascinating. To think that organic beings such as yourselves can have special abilities as well. He held out a hand as he explained further. You see, my people also have unique abilities, and they are very similar to these quirks that your race has. Fowler gave a small chuckle. Hey, guess that means we may have more similarities than we thought. He extended a hand over to his two other agents. Oh, and by the way, these are Agents Jacob Burns and Marissa Fairborn. Burns was actually the one who released you from your pod. Prime nodded over to Jacob gratefully. Thank you, Agent Burns, I greatly appreciate it. Burns saluted back before Prime went back to Waylon and Fowler. Well, I am certainly glad that I was able to meet with government officials first upon my awakening. And thank you for explaining just what kind of planet I have landed on. However, he suddenly let out a groan and his hand went to his head, a hazy feeling moving through his processor. MPH, although, I do feel somewhat dazed. Jacob raised a hand. You may want to take it easy for a few minutes. You've been trapped in that pod for a very long time. Optimus blinked a couple times before asking, how long? The group of Sector 7 agents all wore awkward faces before Marissa hesitantly answered, oh, you know, around 250 years. Silence permeated through the room as Optimus let that fact sink in, his optics wide. Oh no. His hand went to his forehead in disbelief. I've been in stasis for over 200 stellar cycles. My Autobots, they must be alive. Optimus was cut off when Izuku spoke up, his optics darting over to the Greenette and the other teens instantly. The 4 teens were taken off guard and they all jumped, with Izuku in particular feeling very nervous. They're all alive, Mr. Optimus P. Prime, sir. Optimus was silent again for a few moments before he stood up, walked over to the 4 teens, and then crouched before them again, intent on hearing the young man further. Young human, how do you know this to be true? Izuku felt a supportive hand on his shoulder and he glanced over to Kyoka, the earphone jack user wearing a confidence etched across her features. Because we know a couple of them, Optimus Prime, sir. However, the Prime raised his hand to her again. Please, no need to be so formal. Please, call me Optimus. And in return, to whom do I have the honor of addressing? Kyoka's eyebrows rose up in surprise before snapping back to reality in a second. Oh, well, my name's Kyoka Jiro. And this is my best friend. She nudged her elbow into Izuku's side and encouraged him to introduce himself as well. You are right. Izuku stammered, still clearly nervous as he bowed to the Autobot stiffly. I'm Izuku M. Midoriya. It's a pleasure to meet you. My name is Momo Yaoyorozu. Momo bowed as well, sending a kind smile up to Optimus. It's a true honor to meet someone of your stature, Optimus Prime. And I'm Mei Hatsume. Mei said with an exuberant wave of her hand. It's nice to meet ya, Optimus. And I gotta say, ever since we first encountered your race, I've been super fascinated by your existence and I've made it a point to study you and your culture. Optimus raised an eyelash at that, but rolled with it nonetheless. I see, tell me, who exactly are these other Autobots that you have met? Oh, Windblade and Bumblebee. Mei answered casually. They've been great friends, let me tell ya. However, Optimus's optics shot open once again. Windblade is here on Earth. What a relief, I was worried that she would never. but then, he cut himself off when he remembered May had said another name, one that he was unfamiliar with. Wait, who is this, Bumblebee? Realization passed over all the teens' faces before Izuku answered. Oh, well, that's the N name that we gave him. Why, you might know him B better as B-127. Astonishment was seen all across Prime's expression at that revelation. B-127, he is alive. There was a brief pause, and then Optimus let out a brief chortle as he stood up. Haha, so there is still hope after all. I knew that he couldn't have gone offline all those centuries ago. He directed his gaze down to the teens once again, seeing that they were all smiling up at him. Thank you for telling me this, children. This is all very excellent news. Tell me, are Windblade and B-127 here right now? At this question, though, he saw the teens' faces begin to falter, worrying him greatly. I take it that there is something wrong. Right on the money, Optimus. Kyoka confirmed with a solemn nod. See, the Autobots aren't the only ones on this planet. Her expression went to a more pointed glare as she eyed the Sector 7 agents, specifically Burns, Fowler and Wayland. You guys wanna tell the big bot or should I? There was a period of silence before Fowler sighed and waved Kyoka off. I'll do it. I feel a sense of responsibility to after everything that's happened. He locked eyes with Optimus again before telling him. You see, Prime, we were deceived. He then told the Autobot leader about how the Decepticons had tricked Sector 7 into doing what they did, allowing the cons to get what they want and then some. So, that's that, Fowler said as he, Wayland and Burns kept their eyes glued to the floor. I don't blame ya if you hold us accountable for this situation, Prime, but you are forgiven. Fowler, Burns and Wayland were all surprised by the bluntness of how Prime said that, but they were also taken aback by the sincerity in his voice. Optimus continued on from there. Believe me, Agent Fowler, you and your people are far from the first to be deceived by the Decepticons, and you will not be the last. I have seen the Decepticons trick many bots in my time as leader, and compared to some of those situations, you all definitely managed to get off far easier than most others. He waved his hand to the three. However, we can dwell on all of that later. Right now, what's important is that we need to get to the Decepticons before they send that signal to Cybertron. He's right. Fairborn spoke up. I doubt that Windblade and Bumblebee will be able to hold out much longer, but there is a bit of a problem. Everyone raised a brow to her at that. And what's that, Marissa? Momo asked. The medical officer Winston eyed everyone in the room. Did anyone consider that Shizuoka is at least 3 hours away from Ibagawa by driving? How are we going to get there in time? Everyone's jaws went slack, and then the teens began panicking, with Izuku, Kyoka and Mei all running around screaming in fear while Momo held her head in her hands. Okay, wasn't expecting that reaction. Marissa deadpanned. Back at the shipyard, Bumblebee and Windblade were still keeping up with the cons, every move, staying on top of them with every attack they sent their way. Sure, Bumblebee and Dropkick had pretty much torn down a whole swath of metal shelves, and Windblade and Shatter were practically at each other's throats for the whole ordeal, but the Autobots stayed on the Decepticon duo for the duration of the fight. At least at first. While Windblade had kept the pressure on Shatter for a good while, the taller femme finally managed to get enough space between the two to bring out her blaster. She aimed and took a shot at Windblade, forcing the warrior to roll away to avoid the shot. This allowed Shatter an opportunity to transform into her dune buggy mode, driving away as fast as she could. Wah! Hey! Windblade transformed into jet mode and took after her. I'm not finished with you yet. As that was going on, Dropkick continued to find himself in a spot of bother with Bumblebee. The bug seriously just wouldn't give him a second to collect himself and get back on the ball. No, instead the yellow mech just kept taking each and every opportunity to sting him, sending intense electric shocks all throughout his body. Gah! Stop shocking me, you little best, and fight like a mech. Dropkick. The blue con's optics snapped around to see his partner come dashing toward him with Windblade on her table. Let's trade. Take care of the city speaker and I'll squash your bug for you. Sighing in relief, Dropkick obliged gratefully. Oh, thank Primus. Dropkick made a dash for it, which made Bumblebee take off after him. Unfortunately, this would prove to be a mistake as Dropkick jumped straight over Shatter and the red femme rammed straight into Bumblebee, making him slam directly into her hood. Bumblebee. Windblade cried out, only to be grabbed out of the air by her wings. Gah! As it happened, Dropkick managed to jump high enough to get a hold of Windblade, the city speaker being forced down to the ground before being tossed away. She transformed again and landed on her side, with Dropkick laughing as he drew closer to her. Gah ha ha ha, the blue con guffawed. You Autobots are always so easy to toy with. And you know what we like to do with our toys, right? Dropkick reached behind him and pulled off his rotors from his back, the two blades folding in together to form a rather sizable sword. We like to break him in, hee hee hee. Windblade clenched her teeth and forced herself up, going for Stormfall the moment she got to her knees. Yeah, well guess what? She activated her purple energy sword and sent a glare to Dropkick. I have no plans on being broken anytime soon. The two combatants let out a couple of battle cries and they went at each other, their respective swords clashing in the middle. Sparks flew from the meeting of the blades and they pulled back, only to go right back again. This pattern continued for a good while, with neither opponent willing to give an inch of ground to the other. Multiple parries and counters occurred between the two before Dropkick saw an opening and lunged with his blade, intending to stab Windblade right in the chest. However, Windblade opened her wings and sent a gust of air from her turbines, allowing her to leap far away from Dropkick. She did a backflip and landed on her feet, giving the con a "come at me" motion with her hand before resuming her attack. As that was happening, Bumblebee found himself between a car and a hard place as Shatter literally rammed herself and Bumblebee straight into a building, the duo crashing through the weakened walls with little effort. Shatter came to a halt, but Bee was sent careening forward, slamming through multiple shelving units before landing in a heap on the other side of the room, landing on his hands and knees. Shatter transformed and slowly made her way toward Bumblebee, a cold chuckle escaping her lips. HM, I have to admit, B-127, you really gave us more trouble than we expected. She aimed her blaster at B and fired, but the yellow mech managed to avoid it and leap behind more sets of shelves. And if that weren't enough, the city speaker just had to follow us to this planet. Bumblebee's optics widened at that before Shatter confirmed his thoughts. Yes, I knew that had to be the case the moment we found you. There would be no way any of you Autobots could have found this isolated rock out here in the universe. Bee could hear her footsteps growing closer, able to hear the sadistic smirk on her face. Such an insignificant planet. I'll be quite happy when it's gone and we take these human worms as our servants. Dropkick is going to get some very enjoyable fun out of that, including using your friends as target practice. Ahahaha. Bee's face began twitching in anger. He knew he shouldn't let it get to him, especially in the heat of battle. But at the same time, his friends had just gotten threatened in a way that made him furious to his core. He could feel his blue eyes become red as he activated his visor, ready to take Shatter on. He snapped up from his hiding place and fired an electric bolt on Shatter, only for the taller Femme to avoid it completely. Shatter chastised. Now isn't the time to be giving into your anger, especially since I'm going to do this. The red and black bot aimed and shot directly at B, which the smaller bot countered with his stingers. The energy blast met with the electric bolt and, boom. Both opponents were sent sprawling back as the explosion happened, causing at least one of them to go careening into the next room. That just so happened to be Bumblebee. And for a few moments, he thought he was in the clear. But then, Shatter came strutting out through the smoke, and she definitely didn't seem all that amused. ZRKT, we're gonna need a bigger boat. B said through his radio before charging back into the fight. He knew he might regret it later on, but what mattered most was making sure that transmission didn't get out. I gotta get to that tower, and fast. I only hope that the guys at Sector 7 are having better luck than we are. The adults and Optimus continued to watch as Izuku, Kyoka and Mei continued to scream in alarm, with Momo simply pacing around while muttering, "What do we do?" to herself over and over. Honestly, though, Fowler couldn't blame them. While they were heroes in training who had already been through multiple stressful situations at this point, this type of scenario was still new to them all, and it did seem like there was no immediate options for them to take. Still, that didn't stop the agent from yelling, "Hey!" The teens all stopped in place, their attention garnered immediately. Fowler gave them a stern look and pointed at them. "Now listen here, we're not gonna get anywhere with you kids just yelling your heads off. If you want to be future heroes, you must remain calm under pressure, and think things through. I assume you learned something like that during what happened at the USJ yesterday, correct? The teens, especially Izuku, Kyoka and Momo, all wore sheepish expressions and glanced away from Fowler in embarrassment, though the punk rocker still seemed a bit frustrated. Well, yeah, but we don't exactly have any way of getting back to Musudafu in, like, a few minutes tops, now do we? Unfortunately, she's right, Wayland commented with a shake of his head, facing up to Optimus with a serious face. We don't have any cargo planes that could possibly transport you down south, so it seems we're stuck. I see, that is rather unfortunate. Optimus nodded before craning his head back to the teens. Tell me, children, do you know specifically which Decepticons Windblade and B-127 are engaging with? Izuku gulped down air before answering. Their names are Shatter and D-Dropkick, I think. Prime's irises furrowed. I see, that is very worrisome. Shatter and Dropkick are two of Megatron's top hunters. They will stop at nothing to complete their objective. They will not hesitate to kill on sight. Yes, we found that out the hard way. Momo muttered. Dropkick made one of Sector 7's scientists pop into some kind of viscous liquid with a single blast. The Autobot leader grimaced and shuddered. Yes, he tends to do that with organics. Optimus pondered for a few moments more before a thought came to his head. However, there may just be a way to outwit them. He pressed a finger to the side of his head and spoke loud and clear. Windblade, this is Optimus Prime, do you read, CCCCSSSSHHH? Prime cut himself off when he heard nothing but static over his comlink, a perplexed look on his face. Wait. Your comm probably won't work down here, Prime. The Autobot craned his head down to Fowler and Wayland, the former continuing, we're probably about a mile under the Earth's surface, and there's about 4 football fields worth of concrete on top of that. No signal gets in, and nothing gets out. I see, well then, we will have to go topside. Optimus concluded. I must get my message out to my Autobots and relay my plan to them. He balled his hand onto a confident fist. If I am right, then there may be a way to beat Shatter and Dropkick at their own game. Well, then what are we waiting for? Izuku asked. Let's get up there and get in touch with B and Windblade. General Wayland nodded at that. Right. Follow me, Optimus. The lift's right over this way. With that, the group of humans began leading Optimus through the hangar, the large Autobot staying in pace behind them. However, as they passed by a certain large room along the way, Prime couldn't help but catch what was inside out the corner of his optic, causing him to stop in mid-step as both optics shot open. He then slowly backed up and turned toward the adjacent room, a breath escaping him as he saw the large, ring-shaped gateway that was inside it. Oh, my word. As he uttered that, the humans all stopped and they all faced Prime once again. What's the matter, Optimus? Momo raised a brow. Is there something wrong? The immediate response from Prime was another short chortle, a hand moving up to his helm as he processed what he was staring at. Haha, no, in fact, things couldn't be any more right. He waved his hand down to the humans. Scrap the old plan, everyone, I think I may have just found us a new, better one. The humans watched as Optimus stepped toward the gateway, to which Wayland immediately interjected. Optimus, sir, I highly advise not getting too close to the gateway. He urged. Trust me, that this is as unstable as can be, and if you're not careful, you could. Do not worry, General, I know what I am getting myself into. Optimus assured, stepping up to the large console of the device. He pressed a switch and, to his surprise, the device switched on, the screen showing a large diagram of a sphere, which appeared to actually be a globe that had all of Earth's continents on it. Beneath his faceplate, Optimus smiled at this. Excellent, it still works. He faced the Sector 7 personnel and inquired, how did you acquire something like this? And where exactly did you find it? The 7 humans all stared on in astonishment at what they had just seen, but Burns was still able to answer P-time. Well, about a century ago, one of our teams found this buried beneath a temple in Greece. We had a feeling it had to be something powerful, so we disassembled it and then brought it back here to set it up. Wait, Optimus, Kyoka started. You mean you know how to work the gateway? Indeed, I do, Kyoka. Optimus affirmed, turning to face the group while gesturing to the gateway itself. However, while the term gateway is certainly accurate, the proper term for this device is actually ground bridge. He stepped over and placed his hand on the main archway of the ground bridge, continuing to explain. You see, this device is actually a scaled-down version of space-bridge technology, and it is used for Cybertronians to travel across the surface of any planet in a mere nanoclick. Everyone's eyes were staring in stunned silence as Optimus elaborated further, but none were more excited than May herself. Ah, a machine that can teleport you anywhere in the entire world. That's so awesome. She laughed as she ran into the room, climbing up onto the ground bridge's platform. This is just amazing, we haven't even managed to perfect teleportation technology. I mean, there are people with teleporting quirks, but it's just not the same. Izuku, Kyoka and Momo all stepped up as well, with the adults following after them. So, wait, why you're saying that this thing can just have us all on the other side of the planet I in the blink of an eye? Izuku asked. That's incredible. It is. Optimus nodded. And it will be the key we need in getting to that shipyard where the Autobots are holding off the Decepticons as we speak. He shifted his gaze down to the console again and typed in a command, which brought up some sort of energy reading graph. Well, it definitely hasn't been used in a long time, and the energon levels are somewhat low. He faced the group with a serious face. By my estimate, we should have enough energon for the ground bridge to remain open for about 10 to 15 cycles, so we will have to make it count. It was then that Fowler cleared his throat. Prime, while I don't doubt your familiarity with this device, I'm sorry to inform you that this plan may not work. He placed his hands behind his back as an uncomfortable expression came to his face. You see, a long time ago when this thing was deconstructed and then rebuilt in this cavern, the scientists and agents that came before us tested this ground bridge out. And well, let's just say that things didn't exactly go too well for them. That's an understatement. Marissa jumped in, pointing to random points across the room. From the medical report, there were body parts here, limbs over there, innards were strewn all over the place, and TMI. Kyoka shouted, putting her arms in an X to tell the doctor to knock it off. Seriously, I think we all get the picture, Doc. Optimus, however, hummed to himself in thought over this. I see, well then, the most likely reason for that would likely be that those agents must not have rebuilt this ground bridge to the letter. He placed a hand on the console. Just by operating it, I can tell that the console does still work, so it is either a problem with the ground bridge generator tunnel, or with one of the key components. So, do you think why you could fix it? Izuku followed up. Well, I am no space bridge engineer. Optimus shook his head with a shrug. And I am certainly not as technically minded as Red Alert, Ratchet or Wheeljack. However, I have studied space bridge technology extensively during my time as a data clerk. Optimus walked over to a panel on the platform and lifted it up, revealing a whole slew of rather important-looking component parts. I may be able to get the ground bridge up and running, but I will need a bit of help. He faced Waylon and gave him a nod. General, I may require the best technical mind in this facility to assist me. Waylon immediately nodded back. Say no more, Prime. I'll go get. The group turned to face May once again, the Pinkett wearing an indignant expression. Listen, I know you guys may want professionals to handle this kinda stuff, but trust me, you're gonna want my help. Everyone stared at May for a good few moments before Izuku spoke up. Hatsume, are you sure that's a good idea? No offense, but you've never really dealt with this kinda T-Tech before. So, no one else has either. May replied nonchalantly, taking everyone aback. Don't worry about it, guys, I'll be fine. She gestured over to the Prime kneeling down next to them. Besides, I've got Optimus to walk me through it. Trust me, things will be all good. There was a short silence following that as Prime contemplated the decision. Well, so long as you are careful, I will allow you to assist me, May. Prime allowed, only to raise a finger. However, I also strongly advise that you only touch what is needed. I will walk you through the process as we check for any abnormalities, alright? May saluted the Autobot leader respectfully. If you say so, Optimus. This is gonna be so awesome. Someone get me a soldering iron and a pair of welding goggles, because this thing's gonna get intense. Prime hummed to himself as he watched the Pinkett bounce up and down in place, all while Burns and Fairborn went off to get the tools she would need. Optimus briefly wondered to himself if this was really a good idea or not, but at the moment, what mattered most was getting the ground bridge up and running. And if May really thought she had the technical know-how to bring it back to full working order, then he wasn't about to argue. He reached down and began to carefully pull out the circuit boards one by one, inspecting them with a keen optic to make sure that everything was in working order. However, when he came to a certain component, his irises furrowed at the sight of it. "Oh, that is definitely not good," he commented. Prime turned it over to reveal that the circuit board that he pulled out was not in good shape at all, something that took everyone by surprise. "It is just as I suspected," Optimus affirmed. "One of the integral components for the transwarp drive has been heavily damaged. Now I can see how those agents from back then had trouble with this thing." Wayland commented. "Can it be fixed?" Fowler wondered out loud. Prime inspected the circuit board further before coming to a conclusion. "Well, it would not be ideal to use it, even in a repaired state. But at this point, we might as well give it a try." He placed the component in front of May and gave her a nod. "Well, May, I believe it is your turn. Think you can do it?" May smiled confidently and placed a fist over her chest. "Just watch me work, Optimus." May pulled over the soldering iron and placed a pair of welding goggles over her eyes, ready to get right to work. In addition to the soldering iron, though, Burns and Fairborn had also brought her a bunch of other metals used specifically for this kind of work, and in no time at all, she had finished, and the end result was something that looked so cobbled together that it almost didn't even resemble the other circuit boards. She held up the component and proclaimed, "Done." However, everyone could only stare slack-jawed at what she had just done. Everything seemed to be in place, but at the same time, they weren't. It was very odd-looking indeed, and it raised more than a few concerns among the group. Hatsume. Momo spoke up. "I'm not sure if that's safe to use." "Yeah, I mean, it almost looks like you just improvised." Kyoka added. "PSH, well yeah," May said without a hint of reluctance. "I mean, like I said, I have no idea how space bridges work, but I have done plenty of work on circuit boards." She walked over and placed the now odd-looking component back in with the other ones, sliding it into place. "The thing was far too damaged to get back to 100% normal, but I've done this sort of thing before. And all of those time, the circuit boards worked." She set her sights up to Optimus and gave him a wink. "Trust me on this one." Prime furrowed his irises again, a hint of doubt in his processor. However, seeing how self-assured that May was about the situation, Optimus sighed and gave the Pinkett a nod. "Very well, let us see if your patch job worked, May." "Give me one moment." Prime stood up and went through the archway of the ground bridge, inspecting the inner rings to make sure that they were all in place. Once he was sure they were all structurally sound, Optimus nodded to himself and stepped back over to the console. Everything seemed to be in order on the structural side of things. Now, all that's left to do is enter the coordinates. He activated the computer before facing down toward Wayland and Fowler again. "Do you happen to know where this, Musudafu, is located on a latitudinal and longitudinal plane?" "Not off the top of my head, but I can look it up." Fowler stepped off the ground bridge platform and made his way over to another set of computers that were in the corner of the room, logging on before heading straight into a browser to look up the exact position of Musudafu. Once he found them, he relayed them to Prime immediately and the Autobot leader entered them into the console. "There, if I'm right, those coordinates should take you directly to the shipyard in Musudafu." "Thank you, Agent Fowler." Optimus thanked before facing the console again, preparing himself for what came next. "All right, the moment of truth." Prime grabbed the lever on the console and muttered, "Cross your servos." Inferring what he meant by that, many of humans crossed their fingers, keeping their eyes shut while May simply wrung her hands together eagerly, an excited smile on her face. "Here goes, everything." With that, Optimus pulled the lever and the group could immediately hear the ground bridge begin to power up. Within a few seconds, a bright light began to flicker on from the other end of the tunnel before all of the rings began to glow as well, turning on in succession before the largest ring lit up on their end. And then, something amazing happened. The humans could only stare in shock as a huge vortex appeared through the tunnel, the swirling blue and green colors practically captivating everyone present. Whoa, this is amazing. Izuku uttered in awe. That's an understatement, green bean. Kyoka said. So, is it working properly? All of a sudden, Momo lifted her shirt up and exposed her stomach, much to everyone's shock. Let's find out. All of a sudden, she used her quirk to create a plastic mannequin, which rattled to the floor lifelessly. She pulled her shirt back down and handed it up to Optimus. Here, throw it in and see what happens. The Prime was initially confused at first, but he rolled with it. Very well. Optimus took the mannequin in hand and tossed it into the ground bridge. And, sure enough, the plastic facsimile went through without trouble, causing Mei to give a cheer. Ah ha ha. Woo. Mei laughed. I knew it would work. Izuku wiped a bit of sweat from his forehead. Phew, well, that's a relief. Indeed it is. Prime agreed. So now, it is time to put it to use. Optimus strode out in front of the portal and stared into it, preparing himself to go through. But before he did, he knelt down to express his gratitude to the humans. I cannot thank you enough for your help. Both for awakening me and for aiding in bringing this ground bridge back into working order. He placed a hand to his chest and gave the teens a reassuring gaze. And trust me, I will do everything I can to assist Windblade in B-127. I only hope that I am not too late. Same here, oh Optimus. Izuku agreed, only for a sheepish expression to come to his face. But there is something that I was wondering. And what would that be, Izuku? Izuku gulped and tapped his fingers together nervously. Well, I was wondering if, we could go with you. This request took the adults by surprise, and before they knew it, Kyoka was advocating for it as well. Hey, yeah, we wanna tag along. Those are our friends on the other side of that portal, after all. We wanna see this thing through to the end. I third this motion, Mei piped up. And I want to go as well. Momo agreed. I know I haven't been a part of this for long, but after everything that's happened today, I feel like we should all be there. The reaction from the adults was what the teens were expecting. What? Fowler exclaimed before waving his hands in denial. No way, no how, out of the question. He strode up to the teens and pointed a finger at them. Have you kids lost your damn minds? What in the Sam Hill would possess you to even think of going there? Fowler's right. Wayland concurred. It's far too dangerous for you children to get mixed up in that kind of fight. I may not have been there when it happened, but you all saw what those cons did to Powell, right? Do you want to end up like that? Well, no, obviously. Kyoka affirmed, a determined expression on her face. But at the same time, it just wouldn't feel right to be there for them to at least show our support. She pointed toward Izuku and Mei. These two have been with Bumblebee from the very start. Kyoka placed a hand on her own chest. I've been in on the secret for a month or so, and then she set her sights onto Momo. And Yaomomo's known for about 2 days now. But no matter how long we've known about the Cybertronians, there's one thing that we can all say for sure. Izuku piped up, one way or another, we've helped them keep their secret on Earth, and we want to keep doing that. We want to keep being there for them, to help in any way we can. He faced Optimus one more time, his features etched with confidence. So please, Optimus, let us come with you, if only so we can show our support. We promise that we won't get in the way. Momo added, we swear by it. There was a long pause, with Optimus staring down at the 4 teens in contemplation. Finally, after a moment, he spoke to them. Very well. Here's what I want you to do the moment we get there. Prime pointed down to the group of 4. You are all to stay out of sight of the Decepticons. Find a safe and well-isolated place to hide where they will not see you, and if they should come toward you, you are to move away immediately. Is that understood? The quartet stood up straight and gave him a salute. Sir, yes sir. They all said simultaneously, with Mei adding, we won't let ya down, big bot. Very good. Optimus nodded before setting his sights on the adults. I know that this is not exactly the most ideal of situations, but from what I've seen, these children seem quite dedicated to our cause. He placed a hand over his chest. I swear that they will not be harmed, you can count on that. Prime, I know you admire their tenacity. Wayland shook his head. But we cannot just potentially risk the lives of children here. But then, surprisingly, Agent Burns stepped up and raised a hand to the general. I mean no disrespect by this, General, but if you ask me, I think the kids should go. He faced the group and smiled at them, while ignoring Kyoka's skeptical face. I'll admit, I initially didn't think much of them when we first encountered them, but I think it's obvious by now that they know a lot more about the Cybertronians on a personal level than we do. He's right. Fairborn agreed. The Autobots are important to them, so I can see why doing this would be important to them as well. Both Fowler and Whalen attempted to argue, but when they saw the conviction that was etched onto everyone's faces at that moment, they knew that they had to be overruled. Fowler sighed, his shoulders slumping. Very well, but then, he gave a pointed look to Optimus and pointed at him. But I'm warning you, Prime, if anything happens to these kids, it's on your head. And I am willing to take that responsibility, Agent Fowler. Optimus said as he stood up. But I can assure you. On my watch, nothing will happen to these children. Come. With that word, the teens all followed Optimus to the portal, the Autobot leader setting his gaze down to them. Now, are you all ready? The 4 teens nodded to him, giving Optimus the go-ahead. Well then, I suppose it's time to transform. WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHK. In no time at all, Optimus had converted into his vehicle mode, his doors opening so that the teens could all climb into his cab. And roll out. Back at the docks, things were not going so well. Windblade was beginning to feel the fatigue beginning to set in as she continued her duel with Dropkick, the duo clashing their swords together in quick succession as they moved throughout the shipyard. Her arms felt heavier with every strike and her intakes began working in overtime to keep her systems cooled, but even then, she felt herself began to get overheated. In turn, however, she saw that Dropkick was also quickly growing exhausted as well, his somewhat bulkier frame wearing him down even more than she was feeling at the moment. Windblade smirked and breathed out, had enough. No, Dropkick said before pulling his double-barreled hand cannon out, taking aim at Windblade and making her optics widen. I'm just getting started. He shot a blast out at the city speaker and she was forced to dodge, getting out of the way just in the nick of time. However, at the same time, she ended up slamming back against a wall of a nearby building, making her drop to one knee. Gah, come on, hold still you little. And why would I do that? Windblade retorted, quickly standing up despite the pain. You're actively trying to kill me. Oh please, at this point, you might as well just give in. Dropkick said before pointing up to the antenna with his sword. By my estimate, the transmission should be ready to transmit in about a few cycles tops. And the only way to get there is to go through me. He narrowed his optics and held both his sword and hand cannon aloft. So, what death will it be, Miss City Speaker? A shot to the head or shall I run you through? Windblade placed a finger to her chin. I choose, neither. Windblade jumped up and went to transform, but then, crash. Gah. All of a sudden, Bumblebee came careening through one of the windows of the building Windblade was standing next to, which resulted in both of them crashing to the ground. The femme heard her friend speak through his radio, ZRKT, sorry, my bad. Before, just as suddenly, Shatter came charging through the wall of the building, her blood-red glare focused directly onto them. ZRKT, Houston, we have a problem. I am officially done dealing with you pests. Shatter roared before taking Bumblebee up by the throat, placing her gun's barrel directly in front of Bee's chest. We will be getting that message to Cybertron, and when we do, schnacked. Ow. Shatter was forced to let go of Bumblebee when Windblade stabbed Stormfall through the femme's leg, making her take a knee. Frag it all. Bee, move. Windblade shouted, prompting the two to run as fast as they could while Dropkick blasted after them. However, just as they were running, something very unexpected popped into existence directly in front of them. There, in front of Windblade, Bumblebee, and the pursuing Dropkick, was a certain green and blue glowing vortex. It can't be. Dropkick's optics widened in shock. A ground bridge. What? Shatter exclaimed in disbelief, still clutching her leg in pain. What in the world is it? But then, she cut herself off when the four saw something odd falling out of it. It was vaguely human-shaped, but it lacked any distinct features of one, namely a face. It clattered to the ground and made a hollow sound when it did, only making them more confused. ZRTK, what in the world is going on here? Bumblebee wondered, only for both him and Windblade to get shoved to the ground by Dropkick. ZRKT, hey. Move over, Pipsqueaks, let a professional handle this. Dropkick insulted before taking aim at the mannequin, still unsure if it was a living being or not. He lowered himself down to take a closer look, and that would prove to be the biggest mistake he could have ever made at that moment. Honk honk. The sound of a loud truck horn caught Dropkick by surprise, his head snapping up and his optics widening as a set of 4 bright headlights suddenly came into view through the ground bridge portal. Wait, wah, clang, gah. In one fell swoop, the vehicle that came out of the portal hit Dropkick directly in the face, causing the con's head to snap back and for him to fall on his back, the rear of the vehicle landing and rolling right over him. Ouch. HOOONK. The truck's horn blared as it passed between Bumblebee and Windblade, the two of them unable to clearly see it due to the shining headlights and the fact that it had to be going at least 70 miles per hour. MHA. Windblade shot up to her feet, ready for pretty much anything, aside from what she and Bee ended up seeing. The two Autobots stared on in utter disbelief as the ground bridge portal closed behind them, their jaws going slack. He's here, Windblade muttered. Shatter groaned as she stood up, her internal repairs already working on her foot. I don't know what's happening, but, gah. At that moment, the truck's headlights hit her face and her optics were forced to shut, blinded by the light. Then, in one powerful slam, Shatter was tripped up and sent tumbling away into a stack of crates as the truck began to swerve, its tires screeching along the pavement as it ejected 4 smaller figures from its cab. And then, WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHK. The truck transformed into Optimus Prime, the Autobot leader standing over the 4 humans as he entered a combat stance, his fists raised and ready for battle. Shatter. Dropkick. He called out in challenge. If Dropkick had a mouth, he was sure it would be hanging open right now. Prime. How? Windblade and Bumblebee, however, brightened up immediately. He's back. Windblade cheered. He's alive. Optimus is, but then she cut herself off when she finally noticed the 4 humans that were standing directly beneath Prime, and her processor immediately went into panic mode. Izuku. Kyoka, Momo, Mei, what the scrap are you doing here? The teens all glanced to each other before Izuku sheepishly raised a hand and waved to them. Hee, hi Windblade, G good to see. Gura ag. At that very second, Shatter burst out of the crates and bore a hole straight into Optimus with her glare alone. It was obvious that she was furious. Prime. With a mighty leap, Shatter transformed into her VTOL aircraft mode and burst forward with surprising speed, headed straight for the Autobot leader. Kids. Prime shouted. Get to safety. With those words, Prime jumped up himself and grabbed onto Shatter's wings, being carried off by the Red Femme instantly. You hear the bot, Kyoka said as she grabbed onto both Izuku and Mei's arms, with Momo and herself leading them toward the nearest building to take shelter in, only for Shatter and Optimus to come flying back around, the duo crashing straight through the building all the way to the other side. Not that way. Kyoka quickly redirected the group to a different location, the 3 following her willingly. However, Dropkick wasn't going to have any of it. Oh no ya don't. He took aim with his hand cannon and prepared to fire, only for Bumblebee to jump up and kick it out of his hands. I've had enough of you pests. He raised his sword to strike down at Bee, and in the blink of an eye, Windblade was there to block it with Stormfall. A smirk adorned Windblade's face as she asked, sorry, remember me? Dropkick sneered at that. I wish I could forget. Meanwhile, Optimus and Shatter were still flying around the shipyard, the Autobot leader keeping a firm grip on his adversary. They were rounding back toward where Windblade, Bumblebee and Dropkick were when Prime delivered a hard and stiff punch to Shatter's underside, making the femme give out a grunt before Prime wrenched on one of her wings, forcing her to come barreling toward the earth below. The 2 combatants landed on the pavement and tumbled into a set of dumpsters, the duo grappling with one another for dominance. 300 stellar cycles, 300. Shatter snapped, drilling a fist into Optimus' shoulder. That is how long I have searched for you, Prime. She kneed Prime in the stomach, but surprisingly, Optimus stayed up straight. Megatron was so very upset by your escape, and I promised him that I would return you to Cybertron in chains. Seeing the opportunity, Optimus quickly countered with, well, send my apologies to Megatron then, because he's going to have to wait a lot longer for that. He sent a gut punch to Shatter's midsection and made her stagger back, taking his arm and hooking it with her own. Then, in one fell swoop, he performed a deep arm drag, sending Shatter rolling away from him and allowing Prime to pull out a rather large, black gun. It doesn't have to be this way, Shatter. Simply leave the planet and give up this lost cause. You are outnumbered. A deadly chuckle escaped Shatter's throat at that. He, you think I'm going to stop? I'm never going to stop. The Red Femme pulled out her own blaster and shouted, never. Before firing a blast at Optimus, which he quickly dodged before firing his own weapon at Shatter. Unfortunately, the Decepticon was also quick to avoid that shot and transformed into her dune buggy mode, which sped toward Optimus at near blinding speeds. You will be brought in, Optimus Prime. And Megatron shall have your head. Highly unlikely. Prime muttered before putting his gun away, taking a few mighty strides before diving right at Shatter. Then, much to Shatter's astonishment, Prime grabbed her by the sides of her alt mode, kicked his legs over so they landed on the ground behind them, and then used that momentum to stand straight up and toss her right over his head, sending her straight into a bunch of shelving units that crashed down on top of her. Meanwhile, in their hiding spot, the humans watched on as the fight went down, completely stunned by what they were seeing. Okay, how can something be so epic yet so terrifying at the same time? Kyoka whispered. I know, right, Mei said excitedly. I can't believe how awesome and scary this all is. Well, I know one thing, I'm very glad to be here than out there. Momo trailed off as she glanced toward their hiding place, wincing at the fact that they were hiding behind a bunch of dumpsters. Even if the smell is repulsive. Hey, I picked the closest spot where we wouldn't be seen, okay. Kyoka countered. Wasn't exactly taking smell into account here. However, it was then that she noticed a certain greenette was particularly focused on the battle at hand, intently gazing at the fight between Optimus and Shatter. The perplexed smirked and nudged her best friend. So, enjoying the show. Izuku was immediately knocked back to reality, shaking his head as he faced Kyoka. Oh, well, I guess you could say that. His sights went back to the battle at hand, watching as Bumblebee and Windblade double-teamed dropkick while Optimus kept laying down punches on Shatter. I don't think I've ever seen anything this, for a lack of a better term, out of this world. Kyoka grinned and nodded at that. Hey, yeah, I can see where you're coming from there, celery stick. It's a lot different than seeing heroes and villains duke it out in the streets, that's for sure. Back at the battle, Prime put in one more punch on Shatter, sending the Fembot staggering back. Optimus stepped up and stared at Shatter, making one last attempt to convince her to give up. It's over, Shatter. The Autobots and I have reunited, and there will no doubt be more Autobots coming here soon enough. This is your final chance too. Bah ha ha ha. Shatter threw her head back and laughed, standing to her full height. Ha ha ha, Prime, you are such a fool. I only had to distract you long enough for the transmission to finish its preparation. This got pretty much everyone's attention as Shatter pulled her arm up and activated a holographic percentage meter, one whose bar was at 96%, and slowly rising. Optimus' optics widened in fear and he snapped his head up toward the antenna, which was beginning to glow a bright green right up near its tip. It doesn't matter how many Autobots you bring here. The Decepticon army will be far greater than that. You stand absolutely no chance now. The Autobots and teens all gasped in horror as Optimus shouted, no. The Autobot leader shot forward toward the antenna, but then Shatter stopped him with a hard punch to the face. She then delivered a swift kick to his middle, sending Optimus stumbling back a bit before she delivered another swift kick to his back, forcing him to his knees. Oh, Optimus, how futile your efforts are. Shatter mused as she brought her gun up, ready to take another shot. I am going to thoroughly enjoy bringing you back to Megatron in pieces. Gah, you can try, Shatter. Optimus muttered, narrowing his optics up at the Fembot. But know this, so long as there is a single Autobot left, there will always be hope for a bright future. Not just for Cybertron, but the entire galaxy. Shatter scoffed at that. HMPH, noble, but ultimately pointless. She pointed the barrel to his head. Face it, there is no hope for any of you. Oh, I wouldn't be so sure about that. All of a sudden, a loud, booming voice echoed throughout the entire shipyard, causing Windblade and the teens to gasp, with Bumblebee letting out a cheerful buzz. Then, a strong gust of wind blew through the entire place as a red, white and blue blur with a hint of gold rushed past everyone through the air. The force of the wind was so great that it knocked everyone down, including the Decepticons. Shatter and Dropkick whipped their heads around in confusion before their gazes went up, and what they saw made their insides churn in anger and disbelief. Up on the antenna, just as the percentage meter made it to 99%, All Might pulled out the power source for the transmitter, deactivating the device in an instant. Everyone gazed up at him in wonder, relief and hope as the symbol of peace crushed the power source, all with a bright smile on his face. Because I am here. And it's the end of part 9 of this What If. I hope you guys like it. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment down below and subscribe to the channel.